Hello everyone, my name is Emily Wade. I'm here with Ashley Russell, and this is part 2 of our ergonomic project. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the ergonomic analysis of the human system that is applicable to this project. So OSHA was our main source of ergonomic standards, and we used their standards to evaluate the office worker, and we chose to evaluate the office worker's chair, keyboard, mouse, and monitor. In specific with the chair, we wanted to look at the backrest, the base, the armrests, and the height. In our research, we found this nice quote from OSHA saying that using a chair with a seat that is too high may force you to work with your feet unsupported or encourage you to move forward in the chair to a point where your back is unsupported, making it more difficult to maintain the S shape of the spine. So if you take a look at this picture, this is actually an actual picture of the office worker in her seat that we took when conducting this study. And as you can see, she's doing everything that OSHA recommends you not to do in your chair. And so OSHA had two possible solutions to this. And one being, if the seat cannot be lowered, use a footrest to provide stable support for the feet, or provide a chair with a seat pan that is adjustable and large enough to provide support in a variety of seated postures. So as a solution to this problem for the office worker, the team recommends that the office purchase an adjustable footrest, and that can be seen in this picture right here. And it's designed by Embody Care, and it's available on Amazon for only $34.99. And so this might be a little bit much for some places, but employee health and comfort is worth the price of good ergonomic support systems. So the team also analyzed the other important dimensions of the office worker's chair according to the OSHA standards. And one of those areas that we analyzed was the backrest, and another was the base of the chair, and we found that those both were fine according to OSHA standards. However, according to the armrests, armrests that are not adjustable or those that have not been properly adjusted may expose you to awkward postures or failure to provide adequate support. So, for example, armrests that are too wide can cause you to reach with your elbows and bend forward, and this just causes a bunch of muscle fatigue in the shoulders and back. And so, when we look at the office worker's chair, it does not have adjustable armrests, and overall it's just too big for her. So we recommend that a new chair altogether is better suited for the worker. And new chairs can be expensive, we know this, but especially receptionists, the majority of her work is going to be spent in that chair. And so you want it to be comfortable for them, and so it's definitely worth that investment. Another area that we looked at was the keyboard and mouse of the office desk user, and they were properly positioned and utilized good supports. And as you can see in these photos, the keyboard has a keyboard rest for your wrists, and so does the mouse pad. And OSHA does recommend both of these do have supports, and these supports ensure that the wrists are properly positioned, and it minimizes the risk of carpal tunnel and other different strain-related injuries. Another entity that the team looked into was the monitor, and OSHA gives us this quote to go off of. The top of the monitor should be at or slightly below eye level. The center of the computer monitor should normally be located 15 to 20 degrees below horizontal eye level. And so as you can see, here's a picture of the work desk user's monitor, and she has placed a large book under the monitor. So she did this without knowledge of the OSHA standards, but when she did put this book under the monitor, it moved the monitor out of OSHA recommended standards. So the team recommended removing the book and placing the monitor in the proper location, which we did. In our last video, Ashley mentioned some about this file bin, and it's pictured here underneath this desk, this big green tub looking deal. The file bin is awkward, it's heavy, it's a strain for anyone in the office to lift. So the team recommends that the bin be placed on a rolling cart and set out in the open, or you could use an adjustable table that can be lowered or raised toward or from the ground. So with that adjustable table, they could slide it under here because it's a cart type mechanism, and then when they need it, they could slide it out, and then they could crank it up with the lever to move the adjustable table all the way to where they can successfully reach the files in it without having to bend over and strain their backs. So in this process, through the time studies and the ergonomics standards that we've looked at, we were able to create a standard process for checking in a patient. And here it is showcased in the form of an operations process chart. And this shows the steps required to check a patient in. So we've got three main headers here. We've got the sign in, getting information, and then the charts. And the circles deal with actions or activities that take place, and then the squares represent inspections that happen. So you can take a look at this and follow the flow, the operations process chart, and see the steps required to check a patient in. We also decided to create a flow process chart that showcases the same thing, our standard process. And as you can see, it has the activities listed in this column, and then these symbols represent different actions. So the circle is operations, the arrow is transport, the square is inspection, and the triangle is storage. And you can follow this line for the flow process chart to be able to read that to see how you would check in a patient. We also created a lovely precedence diagram that is pictured right here, and the letters have their correspondence description to the left right here, and it goes through our standard process for checking the patients in. And then another aspect of this was the 5S principles that we really took into account when working on this project. So that kind of took care of the clutter and the disorder that the work desk user had on their desk, and really boosted the cleanliness of the office. So we implemented the 5S principles, which is sort. So with this, we organized drawers with pencils, pens, and the staplers. We set an order, organized work materials in a logical way. So that's us moving the paperwork to the nearby drawer, and just moving the monitor to face the window so that the office desk worker could be more engaged with the customer and not have to rotate as much. The shine, we reduced clutter on the desk space. Standardized, we recorded the ordered steps it takes to check in a patient to create that standard process flow. And then sustain, which they always say that sustain is the hardest part of this process, and it's 100% true. We tried to communicate the importance of the 5S principles to the office worker, and we encouraged her to maintain it. And but at this point, all we can do is sit back and watch and see what actually happens with this. Addressing noise in the office. Before, the office worker could not simultaneously work and communicate with the patient at the window because the worker was turned away from the patient, if you remember how her desk was oriented in the beginning. And often the patients that she was dealing with were elderly and they speak quietly, and the office worker just could not understand them. So now, moving the desk to face the check-in window, the office worker can now face the patient, and she's able to hear them and can continue work while she's communicating with them. So we just wanted to show you a before and after picture of the office design and how we've redesigned it for the check-in desk to be more efficient. And as you can see, the before picture has got the computer in the corner facing away from the check-in window, and the phone and just the different machines like the copier and stuff that she uses, the scanner, were oriented in a way that was not fit. And so we switched that up, and you can see that we've placed these items in a more appropriate position, and that the desk and the monitor is now in line with the office check-in window so that the worker can more efficiently check in her patients. So another aspect of this project that we wanted to address was we kind of wanted to make it a comparative study. So we kind of conducted this in the mindset of once we have our standard process and our standard times for the tasks at hand that the receptionist had to do, that we would find other research that had been done and studies that had been conducted to see how ours lines up with theirs, and if ours is better, why, and if ours is worse, how come. So before we could start this comparative study, we kind of summarized our findings. And so we did find that the before changes time study average check-in time was 2.7 minutes. And then after the changes were made in the second time study that we did, the average check-in time was 1.6 minutes. So pretty good reduction right there in the time to make this process more standard. But when we did do this time study, the team only timed the actions of the receptionist, not the actions that depended on the patient, because we couldn't make changes to what the patient had to do. We could only make changes to what the work desk worker could do. And so this allowed us to focus our study to improve the controllable aspects of the check-in process versus the uncontrollable aspects that we did not worry about. And so when we conducted our research for the comparative study, we could only find studies that encompassed the average check-in time overall. So including the time that was spent just the patients either filling out paperwork or fumbling through their bags to find their correct information with their ID and insurance cards. So when we found this other research, it was for the entire process. But we did find that it should approximately take the entire process 6 minutes. And according to our study, the office worker should take 1.6 minutes to complete her tasks out of the 6 minutes, and then the remaining 4.4 minutes is dependent on the patient. So for some patients, they'll have all their ducks in a row and be able to come in and get checked in really quickly and as close to the 1.6 minutes that the office worker just takes. And then there will, however, be some patients that come in and take probably more than the 4.4 minutes allotted to do the different tasks that they have to do independent of the tasks that the office worker has to do. But that's kind of our comparative study. Unfortunately, it wasn't a direct comparison, but we were able to make some assumptions about this data based off of what we found and what we found that was already out there. And with that information, it concludes our presentation. Here are our sources, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this and that you're able to learn a little bit more about the standard process and the time that it should take for a work desk user to check in her patients, and more about the ergonomic aspects and principles applied to this study. So thank you for watching.